everybody, it's Katie back with another episode of my vlog, and it's Sunday, so it's time for the Cinema Club Sunday Roundup. We have been continuing to make our way through our Halloween watch list for October, picking up some scary, some funny, some just awesome horror movies. So we started the week last week with V, that is spelled V-I-Y, a 1967 Soviet horror movie. Now, if you guys have never heard of V, but you are into weird, really imaginative, really artistic horror movies made with a semi-limited budget, but one of the things you have to remember about Soviet movies is they kind of had unlimited budget. Like they don't have to actually turn a profit. So it's a totally different thing than the Hollywood system. If you like the retro look of the late 60s, man, looks a lot like original Star Trek in places, you will love V. It is based on a traditional Russian folktale, and the story loosely is that there is a group of young seminarians who are sent home on break, and they get lost on the way, and they seek refuge at a farmhouse, only it turns out that the lady at the farmhouse is actually a witch. She ensnares one of the seminarians and basically turns him into her horse and starts riding him around the countryside and then through the sky. And when she eventually lands and he gets a chance to get his hands on her, he basically beats her to death. And as she's dying, she turns into this beautiful young woman instead of being this sort of gnarly old Baba Yaga witch character. Then some little bit of convoluted stuff happens, but basically the dead or dying witch is also the daughter of a powerful man in the local village. And she has requested this seminarian by name to come sit basically as a vigil over her dead body for 3 nights, saying prayers in the church. So then that's the setup, and kind of the meat of the movie is this 3 nights of this seminarian having to spend the night in the church. And each night after the sun goes down, the witch's corpse comes back to life and starts attacking him. He uses prayer and maybe a little bit of magic to keep her at bay, and then survives each night, but then each following night gets weirder and worse until we get to the 3rd night when this witch starts calling upon the powers of hell and bringing these demonic monsters out of the shadows of the church. And sorry, spoiler alert, but the end scene of the movie is unbelievable. The monsters, the way they move, the way they look, they are so cool. There is so much imagination. There is so much artistry going on here. I mean, the movie as a whole is amazing, but that climactic scene. So I won't tell you how it all comes out in the end because I do want you guys to watch this one. But man, you really hang in there for that last scene. If you're getting a little, it can be a little slow in parts, not really, but if you have attention span issues, hang in there until you get to that last scene, because I guarantee you it is, unless you've already spoiled it for yourself by looking up GIFs online, you're going to be surprised, and it's amazing. So V, 1967, Russian movie. I think it's available on Amazon. So the next night after that, we were supposed to watch Witchfinder General, but Henry wasn't feeling well and we didn't want to watch it without him. So we kind of paused on that. We're going to get back to that one later, maybe this week. And instead of a movie from our list, we used a fill-in movie and we watched How to Make a Monster from 1958. This movie is really great to watch after this whole grip of Universal monster movies that we watched, because this is a movie about a guy who's the makeup artist for these types of monster movies, basically having his job phased out when the studio ownership changes hands. And as a way of getting revenge on the new studio execs who have canned him, this makeup artist basically uses a combination of drugged makeup and hypnotism to convince the 2 actors who are playing as the teenage werewolf and the teenage Frankenstein in the movie within a movie that we're at the backstage of. He basically makes them up and hypnotizes them to be his goon squad to go off and kill these movie studio execs. So it's pretty unbelievable. It's a B movie, whatever. It's fantastic. It's got some great gimmicks in it. It's got some great writing in it. It's got some great acting in it. It's got some great makeup in it. And especially, again, if you've been following along with us and watching all of these Universal monster movies, it's really cool to have a movie that then takes place backstage at the movie set where they make these monster movies. And the whole plot is dealing with the career of one of the guys who works backstage on, I guess, behind the scenes, not backstage, but you guys know what I mean. I'm not going to say how it ends, but I will say, like the movies that preceded it, which were I Was a Teenage Frankenstein and I Was a Teenage Werewolf, this movie is black and white for most of it. And then the last reel is in color, which is really weird. We weren't expecting it when we were watching it. And when it happened, all of a sudden, Sean and Jimmy and I were like, why is this movie color now? What just happened? Like, okay. Very strange. Weird decision, but okay, I didn't make the movie. Anyhow, so that was a cool fill-in one. If, like I said, you've been watching along with us and you've been watching all these monster movies, I would definitely recommend it. It really tags along with them very nicely. So I found that very satisfying. The next night after that, we got back onto our list and we watched The Watcher in the Woods from 1980. Now, this isn't a Halloween or monster movie per se, but it is a scary movie made by the Walt Disney Company. This movie came out when I was a little kid. I saw it when I was probably 8 years old, and I remember it being one of the scariest things I'd ever seen. And having this moment, even as an 8-year-old child, of going, oh, how is Disney making a movie this scary? So I really wanted to revisit it with my kids. I wanted to see what I thought of it now and what they thought of it now. Sean and I both thought that it was very effectively creepy for the first 75% of the movie. Once you get to the last part of the movie, the whole thing kind of falls apart. It's got this cheesy ending. It's got this really stupid explanation for what's been happening in the movie. It basically wrecks the movie. I don't think I'm actually recommending that anyone watch this movie. But the first 3/4 of the movie are very, very effectively creepy, and it basically functions as a ghost story. The two child actors in the movie, whose names I can't remember and I didn't write down, sorry, the teen daughter and then the younger daughter, are quite good at portraying, I think realistically, I mean, I don't know about hauntings in real life, but what it would mean to be haunted. They keep hearing things, and then one of them will turn to the other and say, well, why did you just say that? And then the other one will say, I didn't say anything. And it's very creepy. It's got great creepy camera work. It's got great creepy music. It's got Betty Davis in it being a creepy old lady. So again, I don't think I'm recommending it. I did find it creepy though, and I still was like, wow, that's a bit much for Disney. The kids didn't find it scary at all. They thought it was totally tame. They were like, what are you talking about, Mom? This wasn't scary. It was kind of a cool ghost story, sort of. The ending takes it away. But it was interesting to watch. So I'm going to not recommend that one for everybody else. But if you watched it along with us, let me know what you thought. Again, I think the first 3/4 pretty darn good, but they really wreck it with the last part of the movie and the explanation of what's been happening. The next night after that, we went to The Monster Club from 1981. This is a weird, cool anthology horror movie starring Vincent Price and John Carradine as these two characters who are hanging out at like a nightclub for monsters. And so you have these little vignettes of bands playing music, and all of the songs that they're playing are themed somehow for the Monster Club, with a audience of monsters that are just extras in these cheesy rubber monster masks, but they do such a good job of dancing around really energetically to the music and kind of cutting back and forth to the scenes with the two principal actors talking about monsters, that it actually, I mean, it's cheesy as hell, but it really works well. And so then interspersed with these little vignettes inside the nightclub with the musical acts and the monsters dancing, we have these narrative elements. There's a story about a monster called a shadmock who has a terrifying whistle, or if I'm Vincent Price, I would say whistle. There's a story about vampires. There's a story about ghouls. They're all pretty solid stories. It's a pretty fun movie, but it's also just really weird. It's definitely its own little thing in the monster movie genre. And like I said, the kind of the interesting little gimmick of going back and forth between the musical acts at the Monster Club and then the story portions of the movie. It's pretty fun, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. One complaint from our family is the second musical act in the movie. I can't remember what his name is. He sings a song, I'm Just a Sucker for Your Love. But it seems like they shoehorned that one in after the fact. The other musical acts, like I said, have a done-up stage, a full band, monsters dancing in the audience all around the stage. And then this one guy's performance, it's just him. There's no band. The camera's just kind of like going in and out on his face like that. You don't see anybody dancing. So it definitely seemed like they put it in as an afterthought, like they were replacing something that didn't work well. But it really stands out as not like being correctly part of the rest of the movie. So, but other than that one little piece, it is totally fun, very funny, very weird, and definitely recommended for any horror movie fans out there, specifically monster movies, specifically Vincent Price movies. If you like those things, you will love The Monster Club. The next night after that, speaking of funny, awesome monster movies, we got to Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. This is one of a series of movies, but it's the first one of the series where comedians Bud Abbott and Lou Costello get into some kind of situation where they wind up coming face to face with one or more of the classic Universal monsters. So in this movie, they play like baggage handlers at a train station, and they have to deliver some oversized crates to a house of horrors. Of course, when they get there to make the delivery, the guy isn't there, and so they kind of have to figure it out on their own and open up the crates. And when they open the first crate, we see it's got Dracula's coffin in it. They open the second crate, it's got Frankenstein's monster in it. Bela Lugosi comes back to reprise his famous role as Dracula. Lon Chaney Jr. is in the film too as the Wolfman. We don't have Boris Karloff as the monster. It's an actor named Glenn Strange instead. He does a pretty great job, but Bela Lugosi steals the show, coming back and reprising his famous role as Dracula. The whole movie is hilarious. Everybody does a great job in it, but I'm a diehard Bela Lugosi fan, and he's just fantastic coming back after, gosh, what is it? Almost 20 years, like 16, 17 years later, finally reprising the Dracula role for the first time. They've done a ton of sequels to these various movies, but this is the first time that he's come back as Dracula, and he's fantastic. Very funny. I don't want to say too much about the plot or how it ends, as usual, but if you want to be in the Halloween vibe, the monster vibe, but maybe not the heavy, serious version of the monster vibe, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, or again, any of the Abbott and Costello Meet one of the Universal Monsters movies. They're all fantastic. They're all funny. They're all great. What more is there to say? You guys really need to see them. So I'm not going to go all the way to required viewing, but highly recommended viewing on this one. So, and the kids loved it. 2 thumbs way up for that one, of course. The next night after that, we went all the way into Frankenstein comedy with Young Frankenstein, of course, from 1974, directed by Mel Brooks, starring Gene Wilder, also written by Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks, and a whole host of amazing actors who make this movie what it is. I personally think that Marty Feldman as Igor and Peter Boyle as the monster really seal the deal for the whole movie. They are just chewing up the scenery in the best possible way, if that makes sense. But really, everybody does a great job in this movie. It is a parody of either the first 3 or the first 4 Frankenstein movies, depending on who you ask. They did use pieces of the original props from the original lab from Frankenstein from 1931 in the recreation of Dr. Frankenstein's lab for Young Frankenstein. The movie is filmed in black and white, which is awesome for a movie from 1974, of course, to give it that same German expressionist feeling that the original film has. And it picks up a bunch of different elements from, like I said, the first 3 or 4 movies that if you've been following along with us, watching these Cinema Club movies, you will definitely get all of the references that come up in Young Frankenstein, or should I say Frankenstein, because there's, of course, a whole issue about how you say his name in the film. If for some reason you have never seen Young Frankenstein, this one is absolutely required viewing. It is one of the funniest movies that I've ever seen, by one of my favorite directors, starring some of my favorite people. It's just a fantastic film. And as a piece of parody, it is just wonderful. And again, having immediately watched the movies that it is riffing off of, it's great to be able to see all of the different places where they go or don't go with a joke or a reference or whatever. There are a few jokes in the movie that are a little bit dated, but not really. It holds up incredibly well. I will say a lot of the plot and the jokes are based on sex jokes. So if you've got really little kids, you might have to explain that stuff to them or it's going to be flying over their heads. But it's not like they wouldn't enjoy the movie. That's it. That's all to say about Young Frankenstein, except, again, required viewing. You guys have to see it. But I do think if you watch the first couple Frankenstein movies first, give yourself a little breather, and then watch Young Frankenstein, I think it hits hardest. So there's my pitch for that movie. Definitely think you guys should see that one. All right, we rounded out our week last night, speaking of another horror comedy classic, with The Ghost and Mr. Chicken from 1966. Of course, starring Don Knotts in the lead role as Luther, the incredibly nervous and very jumpy wannabe newspaper man. He works at low level at the local newspaper, but he really wants to write stories for the newspaper. And so he becomes convinced by some other people that he should spend the night in a, supposedly haunted house. It's the 20th anniversary of a murder-suicide that had happened in the house. And there's all of these rumors about ghosts in the house. And so the guys at the newspaper convince Luther to go spend the night at the house to write, an investigative piece about it. So, of course, he goes to the house. Of course, he finds a bunch of scary stuff. He feels thoroughly haunted by his stay at the house. But then we have to find out what's really going on. So this movie really takes the form almost of a Scooby-Doo type of episode. Is the house haunted, or is there just a trick that someone is playing on someone else? I'm not going to tell you guys what the ending of the movie is, of course, because I want you to see it. But I will say this is a very funny movie. Don Knotts plays it to maximum effect. If you've ever seen any of his kind of spooked characters, I think this is like the top one. I will say the second they showed the house, the Simmons mansion in the movie, I was like, oh my God, it's the Munsters house. And then I looked it up and I was wrong. It's not the same house that they used for the Munsters. It's next door to the Munsters house on the Universal backlot. But this house in The Ghost of Mr. Chicken was also used as the mansion in one of my favorite films, Harvey. So I knew I recognized it from somewhere, and I was pretty close with the whole house next door on the Munsters. Feeling good about knowing my movie architecture on that one. So, and that's it for this week for us here at Cinema Club. As usual, I would love to hear what you guys have been watching. Have you been watching scary stuff for October? Have you specifically been watching monster movies? Have you been following along with our watch list? Of course, leave me a comment down below, or if you see this video somewhere else on the internet, on one of my social media channels, leave me a comment there and let me know. I always love to know what other people are watching. All right, I am going to leave it there. I will be back in a few more days with another episode of my vlog. Until then, everybody, stay safe and take care out there, and thank you so much for watching.